Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Praveen Kumar Sriram. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer, author, currently working as a Solutions Architect at Azure. This is a series of videos where we learn about private endpoints using Bicep. In our last video, we have learned about creating VNet and subnets using Bicep. In this video, we are going to learn more about creating DNS zones. Let's get started. Azure supports two types of DNS zones. The first one, as you can see here, it's public DNS zones, and the second one is private DNS zones. Public DNS zones can be used for managing DNS, and because it is public, it is resolved by any user on the internet. And the Azure public DNS zones or simply DNS zones are used for public facing domains. For example, www.example.com. Whereas Azure Private DNS zones are used for private virtual networks, which are resolved only within that specific VNet or the VNets which are linked to that specific VNet. Usually these are meant for internal domains. Let's understand more about private DNS zones because this series is all about private endpoints configuration. So obviously when you work with private endpoints, you're working with private DNS zones automatically. So let's understand what is DNS and what is private DNS. So DNS is a cloud service in Azure that allows us to host and manage DNS domains or domain name system domains. In short, they're also called as DNS zones. DNS zone is nothing but a set of collection of DNS records. Now, what is a DNS record? A DNS record is something that will help us in routing the traffic that reaches a web URL to an IP address. So the mapping between URLs and IP address is done by DNS record because as a human you will not be able to remember all the IP addresses, right? So it's easy to remember an URL. For example, google.com, microsoft.com, azure.com. These are all various words or spellings that easily we can remember, not the IP addresses. So each DNS entry or DNS record helps us in mapping, in managing a mapping between a domain and an IP address. For example, here, somewebsite.com. It's easy to remember the spelling. Maybe that the IP address of that particular website is 1.2.3.4. So DNS record will maintain the mapping between this domain and its corresponding IP address. So this DNS records can be used even in private DNS zones as well. So Azure DNS private zone supports FQDN records, where FQDN means fully qualified domain name in a private DNS zone mapping. You'll understand more about this. This is related to Azure Private Endpoint. Now, what is Azure Private Endpoint? An Azure Private Endpoint is a network interface. It's an interface within the network which has a private IP address. And that private IP address is part of a subnet in a VNet that can be assigned or mapped to any of the Azure services that are supported, like storage account, database, web application, and so on. We'll learn more about private endpoints in the upcoming videos, wherein we will create private endpoints using Bicep. For now, here just understand that it's a network interface using which we get private IP address, and that private IP address can be assigned to an Azure PaaS service like storage account, web application, SQL database. So in the upcoming videos, we will learn how to create private endpoints and assign them to SQL Server as well as Azure Web App Service. Okay, so let's now learn more about creating private DNS zones using Bicep. In fact, in our previous videos in this series, we have created everything manually, wherein I already showed you how the private DNS zones created, right? In real world, you will not create multiple private DNS zones for the same requirements. That means, for example, here we are working with app services and SQL databases, right? For every Azure resource type, a separate private DNS zone will be available. And this private DNS zones will be reused across your various projects. You may have 10 different projects within your organization. Every project may have SQL databases, and every SQL database must be associated with private endpoints. So for every server, you don't need to create separate private DNS zone. Of course, if you want, you can create, but it's not recommended. So recommendation is you just have one DNS zone or private DNS zone for each type of Azure resource. Okay. So I already created a private DNS zones as part of our previous videos in this series. So I'm going to refer the existing ones. And of course, I will first show you how to create private DNS zones. And then I'll also show you, instead of creating a new one, how to refer existing ones as well. Let's get started. Let me now navigate to Visual Studio Code, wherein we'll start writing code, or specifically writing the modules for Azure Private DNS zones. Let's navigate there. And before writing Bicep code, let me first navigate to private DNS zones. Search for private, where you can see private DNS zones. I already have two private DNS zones. As I said, these were created while I was demonstrating how to create private endpoints from the portal in one of the videos in this series. So the first one is meant for Azure App Services, and the second one is specifically for database servers. So let's open each of them and see what exactly it contains, so that we create similar ones using Bicep. So first let me open that, and as you can see, you can click on record sets. Right now it has three records. The first one is created automatically. The second one and third one are created for our app service. This app service was created manually. Treat this manual one as one project, the Bicep one as another project. So for our first project, you see two records are created. The first one is for web app. The second one is for Kudu. Okay, basically Kudu is a companion website wherein we can explore the file system of that particular app service plan. The second one is not really important, but it helps us for deployments and all. But the first one is very important. This one is very important for resolving the DNS. Okay. And then it also has virtual network links. That means each private DNS zone must be associated with appropriate virtual networks. That means any traffic within this virtual network will be resolved by this private DNS zone. So again, as I said, all manual things we are treating it as project one. Now in the new project, which is done by Bicep, the virtual network is completely different. So what we have to do is we have to create a virtual network link for the new VNet that you have created in the previous video. Okay. So let's get started. And in this video, we will create VNet links by referring to this existing private DNS zone. And of course, we will not create records now. We will discuss how records will be created automatically later when we create private endpoints along with few more things. Okay. Just remember that currently these two records exist for our previous project, which is done manually. Okay. So now you can similarly explore the SQL related private DNS shown. It also has a record for our SQL server with a private IP address, and it also has a virtual network link. The same virtual network link that is also linked for the private DNS shown related to app services. Okay. So yeah, let's now head over to Bicep. I'm in Visual Studio Code. So currently I have only one module, which is VNet. So I'm going to create a new module for DNS. DNS shown dot Bicep. Let me first show you how to create a private DNS zone. All you need is search for DNS zone. So all you need is provide a name and the location will be global. And you run it, it will create a new DNS zone. But most of the times we will be reusing DNS zone across all various projects that you may have in your organization. So instead of creating a new DNS zone all the time, we will refer to the existing DNS zones. So for that we'll have to use existing keyword. And when we use existing keyword, we don't need to provide the location. Okay. All we need is provide a name, and in general, the best practice for maintaining the DNS zones is to have a separate resource groups. And in some complex projects, people also have separate subscriptions for maintaining all the DNS related stuff. So in my case, I have only one subscription, so I will not be using different subscriptions. However, I will have these DNS zones in a separate resource group. So in such case, you have to specify the scope and then provide the reference of the resource group. So here we need to provide a resource group name. I am going to create a new parameter. DNS zone resource group name. So copy that. It should be a parameter. Param. So the value will be passed from the main.bicep as input. And of course we need to have a parameter for the DNS zone itself that can be used in the name parameter here. So this piece of code will refer to the existing DNS zone. Now the next part is to create DNS records. Now we are not going to create DNS records now in this video. I'll show you how to create DNS records in the upcoming video, because we also need to work with private endpoints. So now the next thing is to create virtual network links. So let's get started working on virtual network links. So obviously we need to create a new resource for virtual network links. Resource VNet links, and it is part of Microsoft network and private DNS zones. Within private DNS zones you have virtual networks. So Microsoft.virtual network, and then within network you have private DNS zones. Okay, let me try searching for virtual
network links. Yeah, private DNS zones. Yeah, this is the one. So Microsoft.network, private DNS zones, and virtual network links, and choose the latest API version. Okay, so now we need to provide a name. There are multiple ways of providing a name because this virtual network link is a sub resource of DNS zone. Okay, so one way is to prefix the DNS zone name. So right now this is the DNS zone name. Okay, or we can also refer it from using the symbolic name $DNS zone name dot name. If you do this, it also creates implicit dependency. If you directly pass the name, it won't create the dependency between the parent and child. And now here we can provide a name, proper name to our VNet. Link to VNet, and here we can specify the VNet name. So maybe I will make it dynamic, and of course we need to pass VNet name, VNet name string. So eventually we may have VNet links created for multiple VNets. It makes sense to append the VNet name for which DNS link is getting created. Okay. And of course the next properties are location, which is again global here, and then now we need to provide the virtual network ID. Of course we have VNet name, we can retrieve the VNet ID based on name, but to make it simple I am going to create a parameter called VNet ID. Okay, and here we don't have any properties here that can be used for assigning VNet ID directly, so obviously we need to go to properties. Properties is an object. Inside properties we have virtual network object which takes ID as parameter. So all we need is pass this parameter of VNet ID to this ID here. So that should do the job, and of course we need to use another setting called registration enabled to false. This is not required here. We don't have to worry about this, and this is how we create virtual network links. And we can also have optionally an output variable that returns as the DNS zone ID. So DNS zone dot equals to DNS zone dot ID. So this is how we refer to the existing DNS zones. Even though they are located in resource group, we can refer them using the scope, and then once we get the reference of DNS zone, we can create a child resource called virtual network links. So this is the bicep code that we have to write for creating the virtual network links. Right now I'm not going to run it. It may contain some errors, but we will test it in another video because we also need to create other components related to DNS zone, which is DNS records. And DNS record also will be associated with other stuff which I'll explain in the upcoming video. For now I'm signing off. If you have any feedback, please share your feedback in the comment section, and if you want to get alerts of the upcoming videos, please subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Jai Hind.